Hello everyone, today I would like to make a video about the 144 megabyte floppy disk. Now once again you might be thinking, wait, don't you mean 1.44 megabytes? No, I mean 144 megabytes. Now there was in fact a version of the floppy disk that did in fact hold 144 megabytes of data. Now, this was one of many different trials into trying to find a newer version of the floppy disk to kind of replace that old archaic version that will be the 1.44. Now, this specific version was released in early 1998 by the Caleb company, Caleb Corporation. Now, Caleb, they had a lot of plans. They had a lot of faith that this was going to be the new thing, the new way to store data. Now, by the time 1998 came around, you had a whole lot of different choices. For example, you did in fact have the recordable CDR. That would be both these 650 as well as 700 megabyte CDR, which did incredibly well. I gotta tell you the truth, the CDR, it did incredibly well. It was a very common product. It sold very well. The market was very saturated because many different manufacturers worked with the CDR. I can't even begin to tell you how many manufacturers that would be. For example, Sony, Samsung, Pioneer, and many different wonderful companies. They work with that concept, the recordable CD, the CDR. Now, regarding this Caleb IT disk, there was only one company that worked with it, Caleb. That was it, only one. That's not good. When you have a new format and only a single company works with it, you're gonna fail. You are, because you're not gonna be able to saturate the market. All right, now I've been wanting to make this video for a long time, but I've been kind of holding it off because I really wanted to have a complete collection, and I finally feel like I have it regarding this format. Now this format, it wasn't sold for too long. It's very difficult to acquire since it wasn't sold for too long and the market share was very low regarding it. They're very hard to acquire, very difficult, but I have been able to find quite a few of these. All right, let me really focus on this right here. Okay, so once again I have a few different versions of that would be the floppy disk on my table right here. Yes, let me kind of explain why I have such a setup like this right here. Okay, so the floppy disk, I love it quite a bit because I actually use it. I actually used it when I was a kid, when I was a teenager, back in when I was in elementary school, middle school, high school. Yes, I did in fact use the floppy disk. It's something very nostalgic, at least for me. Now, I still use floppy disks. I mean, there really is no reason why, especially in the here and now when you have, for example, cloud-based storage, when you have, for example, micro SD cards, which are incredibly small, incredibly powerful, very fast performance, very high reliability. But I happen to love floppy disks. Like I told you, a very nostalgic concept to it. And also, I really love the fact that it stores data via magnetism. Magnetic-based storage is something very special to me. All right. I want to show you this in a lot of detail. Now, I've checked, and there are no other videos regarding this format. I feel like it's time. It's time that there's a video regarding this. Not only a video where I show you my collection, where I kind of tell you the history about this, how much it really tried to succeed and how much it failed. It failed incredibly badly. I mean, compared to these other variations of the floppy disk, I gotta tell you the truth, this is probably the one that failed the worst. This company, Caleb, and went under and went bankrupt. By the time 2002 came around, they couldn't continue. They had to go bankrupt. They realized that their products weren't selling. All right, let me show you this in a lot of detail. Let me kind of zoom in. I've noticed that it really helps when I zoom in. All right, that helps. Okay, so right away, Caleb Technology. Now, this company wasn't around for too long. It was not very well known. I mean, it wanted to be the next thing. But that never happened. Now they call this specific variation the IT disk, IT, by Caleb. It is in fact 144 megabytes. It's a diskette, yes, floppy diskette. Right away it says right here, lifetime warranty. Formatted, do not reformat. Now there's a reason for that. Now I've read online. Now I haven't been collecting this format for too long. I've been collecting it for the past, I believe it's 4 years. It actually took me 4 years to reach this, to be able to acquire a complete collection regarding this format. It says do not reformat. Now I've read that if you happen to reformat these using a standard 1.44 megabyte drive, you will damage the disk itself. It will no longer work. You have to not reformat it. You have to leave it alone, and you have to use the correct drive. Now I do own those drives. I want to show you those drives in this video. So right here it says 144 megabyte IT diskette requires IT drive. All right. They mostly kind of advertise this sort of red color. All right, now this is the back. Now you will find images regarding this via Google, but like I told you, you won't find any videos, and I think it's time. All right, it says right here, put it here. The IT diskette holds 100 times more data. That's 144 megabytes, exclamation point, than the standard 1.44 megabyte diskette. Now you can conveniently store, download, and back up and archive more. And this sort of has like a little funny thing where it used to say 1.44 and they kind of passed that decimal point 2 spaces towards the right. So instead of being 1.44, it's now 144 megabytes. It says the new standard. Well, I guess that's kind of relevant. For example, by the time 1998 came around, you already had, for example, the very famous, very popular, that would be the zip disk. The zip disk did very incredibly well. There were many variations regarding the zip disk. Now, by the time 1998 came around, you did in fact have the zip disk. You might say that the zip disk was sort of like the rival to this format. But you did have others. For example, by the time 1998 came around, actually, this format was released in early 1998. By the time late 1998 came around, you had, that would be the high FD floppy disk, which was in fact 200 megabytes. So this was released a few months after the IT disk was released. Now, compared to these two, I consider this one more it has more technology. It does in fact perform faster than the IT disk. It also obviously holds more data, 200 compared to 144. Now this one actually did a little bit better. Even though both of these technically failed, they really failed to gain that much the consumer market. I believe that the high FD format did a lot better because there was at least 3 manufacturers that worked with this format. That would be Sony, that would also be Fujifilm, but also T8, the Japanese T8 company. They also released this format. So this kind of did a little bit better than the IT disk. But it still failed. It really failed to gain the consumer's attraction. All right. So Caleb Technologies, it's obviously an American company. It says right here, made in USA. It says Caleb Technology, 4775 Walnut in Boulder, Colorado. They did in fact have a website. It was www.calebstor.com. Obviously that website's no longer around. Like I told you, this company went under. They went bankrupt. That would be in 2002. All right. Let me show you the disk itself. Like I told you, they really advertise this sort of red color to the media, which is quite nice. It really stands out from other, like for example, floppy disks, they were very commonly in the black color. So they kind of try to stand out from the rest. So they kind of advertise this sort of red color to their media. So right here it says media 144 megabytes. It still has that same concept where you have to slide this metallic piece to the side like so, which is very common on floppy disks. All right, it really looks like a standard floppy disk if you really, well, obviously it's the same dimensions, like so. Very similar. Now they did change the look on the metallic part. So it will be the standard 1.44. This is the Caleb IT disk. This is the 200 megabyte high FD disk. They all have the same concept. They kind of changed the look on the metallic piece. And also this happens to be the 240 megabyte SuperDisk. They all have that same concept, but they kind of changed the look on that metallic piece on top. Now this is the one that I use the most often regarding all of these four, because I really like the performance on this one. Also the capacity, 240 megabytes. Actually, this format was released in 2001, which is actually about 3 years later. So 3 years after these two formats were released, they released the 240 megabyte version right here. All right. Now let me kind of show you what these came with inside. Well, obviously they gave you a nice looking case for it. That's a translucent case. They really help to protect the media itself. Very nice. All right, so it says right here, Caleb Technology Lifetime Warranty. Caleb Technology warrants that this product is free from defects in material and manufacture at the time of purchase. If any such defect appears during the life of the product, Caleb Technology's entirety library is at Caleb Technology's option, either a repair or replacement of the product or refund of the purchase price of the product. Yes, so they give you a good lifetime warranty on the products that they sold, which is very nice to see. Now this format, it had a lot of plans. Okay, by the time 1998 came around, there was a computer being designed. That was the next computer. That would be NEXT. Now there was plans of installing this drive in those next computers. They were desktop-based computers. It was a very interesting concept because I believe that the some of the people that work with at Apple, they also worked on that desktop. That would be the next computer, which is quite interesting. Obviously, the next computer had nothing to do with Apple computers. It was sort of like a partnership. All right, so that's the, so I'm kind of placing these by the time that they were released. So that was the standard 1.44, the 21. Now I do plan to make a very detailed video regarding that concept. That will be the 21 megabyte floppy disk. Now, considering the fact, or at least where I live in San Jose, California. Now, believe it or not, San Jose has a lot of history regarding this format, the 21 megabyte floppy disk. There is a lot of history. It's kind of like forgotten. I want to kind of celebrate that history. I want to tell you about that history. Now, there are other formats that I collect where San Jose also has sort of like a past history regarding it. One of them is CartridgeVision. Yes, CartridgeVision does in fact have history regarding the manufacturing, the research and development, as well as the sales of the CartridgeVision format. Now, I have made quite a few videos about this format, and I do plan to make more. I just want to very briefly show you this right here. Now, this in fact says right here, San Jose, California, 95112. So yes, this format was in fact sold and distributed and researched and developed in the city of San Jose. It's something that I'm very happy about because I happen to live in San Jose. All right. Now, I have been able to find quite a few of these discs. They're quite rare. They don't show up too often. Now, here's another one. Yes, it's nice to know that these are in fact used. For example, these do in fact have data on them. They're not brand new, for example. They are opened. Yes, these are quite rare. It's a very interesting concept. Like I told you, it really failed. It really failed to gain the consumer's attention, because there were others that did a lot better. Like, for example, the recordable CDR, as well as the zip disk. Yes, the zip disk, it did incredibly well. Yes, the recordable CD, incredibly polished product. Very compatible. For example, it didn't really matter what brand of drive you used. As long as it was compatible with CDRs, you could go ahead and use it. But this format, you had to use a Caleb branded drive, and there was only one released. There was never a portable one released, neither a parallel port one or a USB drive one. No, only desktop ones. And that really didn't help this format. All right, so not only did they sell these single packs, they also sold these 5-packs. Now, this was also something very hard to find. To find a 5-pack of Caleb IT discs in a sealed state, it's incredibly rare. Now, I'm very happy to show you these. It took me a long time to collect these. So yes, they did in fact sell these, and that would be 5-packs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Very nice. This has the original scanning barcode, Caleb technology. Very nice. Now, this was in fact being sold for $5. Now, obviously, these cost way more than $5 in the here and now, based on the fact that these have in fact become collectible. Yes, they're collectible because they're so rare. They're part of history. They weren't sold for too long. All right, very nice. Kind of put this right here. Very nice image right there. The Caleb IT disc. All right, now, so let me go ahead and show you, that would be the drives. Like I told you, they only sold desktop-based drives. That really didn't help this format. For example, if you were a consumer back in early 1998, you kind of had to put into consideration, okay, if I'm going to invest in this format, I have to realize that there are only desktop-based drives. For example, if I want to use my notebook computer, I'm not going to be able to use that disk because there was never any portable drive sold. That really didn't help this format. That's one of the other reasons why I consider this format to be a failure. When you fail to gain the attention of the mobile users, the people that use notebook computers, you're going to lose a big part of the market. Also, this format is in fact not compatible with Apple computers, only IBM, that would be Windows-based computers. That didn't help either. So that's kind of like another stab at the open wound. So like I told you, only one manufacturer, only Caleb distributed it, only Caleb manufactured it. There was only desktop-based drives, no portable ones, and even those were only Windows-based. No Mac computer compatibility. That didn't help at all. That's why this format, it technically failed. All right, so right away, whenever you bought these, they kind of came with this protective cardboard right here. It says shipping insert. Please remove before use. Now, I suspect why they did this. For example, during transportation. For example, if for any reason this device was kind of dropped, there is a chance that the heads will crash. Because regarding floppy disks, there are in fact two heads. There will be one head that rests on top and another head that rests on the bottom of the media. And if for any reason those two heads crash with each other, there's a chance that they might get damaged. So whenever these were brand new, they always place this sort of insert to kind of protect that would be the reading and recording heads. All right, so this happens to say Caleb. Yes, Caleb technology. Let me kind of place it next to this high FD drive, which was actually released a few months later. So this top one was released in late 1998. This bottom one was released in early 1998. So that means that there was a time where you could purchase either one of these two formats at your local stores. There were so many. I mean, in the here and now, there's not that many stores that sell computer-based media. I mean, you still have, for example, Best Buy. But back in the 90s, the late 90s, you had a lot of stores that sold computer media. That would be, for example, CompUSA. That would be, for example, Circuit City. That would be, for example, Fry's Electronics. Yes, all of those stores, they're no longer around. Because for quite a few reasons. For example, nowadays you have, for example, Amazon, which has a wonderful prices. Yes, Amazon, wonderful prices, but also they have quite a large selection. You really can't compare the selection that you'll find on Amazon to those brick and mortar stores that you had back in the 90s. So they're pretty much the same form factor. Same color as well, sort of like that beige color. So these really didn't stand out too much. They were kind of like that sort of vanilla looking drive color, sort of like a beige color. They didn't really stand out too much. For example, they could have maybe stand out, maybe make them like sort of like a silver color to them. So this happens to say high FD 200 megabytes. This only says Caleb technology. Okay, now this is very difficult to explain via a video, but I gotta tell you, the high FD drive weighs a lot more than the IT drive. The IT drive sort of weighs like half as much. This is not as heavy as this guy. This one has a lot of very thick steel, gauge steel to it, incredibly heavy. But I don't really want to focus too much on this one right here. I already made a video about this one a few days ago. So I'm gonna let me put that aside. That would be the 200 megabyte high FD. All right. So right away it says Caleb Technology, and that's sort of like their logo. This actually has jumpers where you have to let the drive know if it is in fact a master drive, a slave, which is actually the factory setting, or a cable select. Now, why? Why the reason for this? Well, that happens to be because this drive does not use that would be the standard floppy disk interface. It does in fact use the IDE interface, which by the time 1998 came around, you actually use, for example, with your hard drives, as well as your disk drives. That would be the 44-pin cable, like this right here. This happens to be a flat ribbon cable. I know that in the here and now you'll find a lot nicer ones, which are the more aerodynamic, but back in 1998, this was normal. This was the standard, the flat pin, 40-pin cable. So yes, this does in fact use, that will be the 40-pin interface, IDE. Now there's a reason for that. They use this IDE interface because this did in fact perform a lot faster than your standard 1.44. You can transfer a lot more data much faster. So it wasn't enough to use the standard floppy disk interface. They had to use this IDE one. All right. Now, even though they used the IDE interface, they didn't use that would be the Molex, the standard Molex 4-pin connector. They still use that older floppy disk power connector right there. I suspect why. For example, you didn't really have enough space for it. For example, the 4-pin Molex connector, it's much wider. It wouldn't fit here. They were limited by space. Let me kind of compare that to the... See, notice this. On the high FD format, you had an option between using the standard a floppy disk connector on top or the IDE on the bottom. On the Caleb drive, you only had the 40-pin connector. This sort of had more options. Well, obviously you really wanted to use the IDE because you would get faster performance. But it still had that option, the floppy disk interface right there. All right, now these two have dates, which is very nice to see. All right. Okay, if you notice right here, it says Caleb, but it also has a date. It says November 18th, 99. That means 1999. So by the time 1999 came around, they were still selling these. They were still manufacturing them, but not for too long. Like I told you, by the time 2002 came around, the Caleb company and went under. They went bankrupt. All right. So that's one of my Caleb disk drives. But I do own more. Like I told you, it took me a while to acquire these, Manny. Oh, they came in this anti-static bag. Okay, one more thing regarding this drive. They never really protected the bottom. That would be the circuit board. They kind of left it exposed, which is, I mean, it's fine. Now, regarding the high FD drives, they actually protected it. That would be with a layer of steel. That's another reason why this one is so much heavier. It has a lot of layers to it. It's sort of like a higher quality product. They really wanted to make sure that these lasted a long time. They were nice and protected against, for example, shorts, stuff like that, against moisture. Something else. Okay, let me see if you can, if I can show you this. Okay, there's a lot of openings right here. Okay. Back in 1998, the computers, the processors, they required a lot of cooling, mostly air cooling. Now, for example, in the here and now, you do in fact have water-based cooling, stuff like that. But back in 1998, they were mostly air-based. That would be with a fan. Now, what would happen with these floppy disk drives, they would become clogged with dust. And that's not good for a floppy disk drive. When you get a lot of dust in there, you start losing performance. For example, the media itself gets a lot of wear and tear because that dust gets in between the disk itself and the read heads. And many times you'll have errors. Now, I suspect that's another reason why Sony's high FD drive, they kind of protect this bottom area to kind of protect it a little bit better against dust, stuff like that. All right, so that's one of those drives. Let me show you another. Now here's another. Now it took me a while to find these, Manny. Okay, so this one also happens to have that shipping insert. It says shipping insert, please remove before use. And that happens to say Caleb. Now I've noticed that these drives have different dates on them, which is very nice to see. All right. So they both happen to say Caleb right in the front. And that's sort of like a paint brush mark. Very nice. Red color. Like I told you, they really advertise that red color. Notice that the button itself doesn't have like sort of like a rectangular shape to it. It sort of has like this oval shape to it. Very nice. This has numbers on the sides. K.A. 1886, K.A. 359. These two have different dates, like I told you. All right, let me show you this in a lot of detail. Okay, this says November 8th, 1999. But this one says September 26th, 1999. Yes, around 1999, these were in fact being sold and manufactured. They still had faith that this format was going to succeed, but it never did. It really didn't. All right. Now here is another one. Once again, that very common beige color to it. Now this one actually didn't come with that insert. very very common looking. For example, these were in fact compatible with your standard disks. That would be 1.44. These could in fact go ahead and read these guys. Yes, like so. But to be able to record or read from these disk, you had to have this drive, this specific drive. Like I told you, only one manufacturer made them. Now this happens to have a different date than the rest. This is actually the newest one that I have. Of all those three that I have, this is the newest one. Because notice right here, it does in fact say December 5th, 1999. That was very close to the year 2000. So pretty much 2 years after this specific drive was manufactured, the company went under. They went bankrupt. The Caleb company. It had ceased to exist. All right, so that happens to be my 3 drives regarding this format. All right, now let me show you something that I was also able to acquire. Now, I was very lucky to be able to acquire this right here, especially in a sealed state. Now, this is in fact nice and sealed with that original factory seal. Now, it's not in mint quality. It's not like I'm going to grade this thing. No, not at all. Okay, so it looks very interesting. You can tell right away, it's really trying to kind of stand out, to kind of be, you might say, hip. But still, it really failed. It really did. All right, let me show you this in a lot of detail. I've been wanting to show you this for a long time. Okay, it says right here, this is it. And this is their advertised logo, the IT by Caleb. It says the ultimate 3.5-inch floppy. Well, it's kind of relevant. I don't know about ultimate. I mean, knowing that there's only one manufacturer that works with it, that really doesn't help. Once again, that new concept, we kind of transferred that decimal point over to places. It says using Caleb it media. Yes, that would be these guys. Very interesting. It says fully compatible with 1.40 megabyte floppy. Yes, like I told you, it was in fact backwards compatible. But not with all of the, for example, you couldn't use, for example, the 21 megabyte floppy disk. No, it wouldn't work. You couldn't use these. These are technically called the floptical disks. No, you couldn't use these on this drive. I mean, it would have been wonderful if you could, but no, it was not compatible. And also, this was not compatible with the Sony High-FD disks. No, they won't read these. They don't have the necessary hardware, the necessary that will be both read and write heads. And they were also not compatible with the SuperDisk. No, they couldn't read these either. It was a completely different mechanism to be able to read and write onto these guys. So right away you can tell it has, it has young people, like to try and let you know, yes, students can use this format to store, for example, their homework. It also has sort of like a doctor or a pharmacist. Yes, this could have been used, for example, by pharmacies, by labs, for example. And it has a businesswoman wearing a business suit. So yes, it could in fact be used for businesses, for business purposes. It happens to say right here, 30 times faster. Yeah, well, obviously that's based on the standard floppy disk. That would be the 1.44. Yeah, this format, it is quite faster, but there was others that were a lot faster than this guy. For example, by the time that 2001 came around, you had this guy, the 240 megabyte SuperDisk. Now, I've compared the performance of these two formats. That would be the IT disk, also known as UHD, which means ultra high capacity floppy disk, to the LS-240. I gotta tell you, the LS-240, it performs much faster. I use this more often than this. I mean, it performs wonderfully, but this gives you a lot more performance. I'm able to play back video regarding this format in the MP4 format, which is quite impressive. This happens to be the Panasonic release product in 2001. You also had others, including the QPS company. I really love this one because it was basically the first one that I was able to acquire. This is the one that I use the most compared to this Panasonic. All right, very nice. All right, so what else was in here? This is the bottom. It says contents. IT drive, of course. So there is in fact another IT drive inside of this package. It says installation guide, IDE, also known as AT-API interface cable, Caleb technology, right there in the corner. Like I told you, by the time 2002 came around, this company went under. It ceased to exist. Okay, very nice. System requirements. Now this is the minimum system requirements that you needed to be able to run this format. It says system requirements, one of the following operating systems: Windows 95 or Windows 98 or Windows NT. Regarding the processor, 386 or higher. But notice, there's no mentions here of the Mac computer. Like I told you, if you when a new format fails to gain the interest of the Mac users, you're gonna lose a huge percentage of those sales. So that's another reason why this format failed. It failed to gain the attention of the Mac users. All right, so this happens to be the back. All right, this has a young woman, a student, holding two of these IT discs. Like I told you, it really trying to kind of be hip, to stand out. But it didn't really help it. It still failed. It really failed to gain a good consumer market. All right. It's 144 megabyte floppy drive. It says right here, Caleb technology, 4775 Walnut in Boulder, Colorado, in the United States. Caleb technology, 1999. All right. For additional information on the IT drive, call, and it had a phone number. You really don't use this concept anymore. In the here and now, you mostly use like a website, a web page. But back in 1998, people, they still used the telephones to find out more information. All right. This happens to have the bar scanning code, original bar scanning code. And that's pretty much it. All right. I really wanted to show you that. Like I told you, it took me a long time to find these, to acquire these. Like I told you, they're not common. They are quite rare, especially in the here now. These have become, in fact, that would be collectible. Amidst collectors like myself. Now, I do consider myself a collector of computer media, vintage computer media, regarding this. Well, this is technically a hobby for me. For example, I don't do this for the money. All right, like I told you, I thought it was time to make a video about this. Now, like I told you, I do own other variations of the floppy disk, other kind of attempts that kind of really try to be the new floppy disk format. And I want to make very detailed videos about those in the near future. So I guess see you next time, and thank you so much.